Hey guys, we're Bludgeon95, recording live from the local county prison cell, but Death Battle's not out yet. Oh wait! That's right, I actually found time to do another Death Battle analysis. Not just the one I'd been sitting on for 3 years, but also an actual new one that. Okay, let me go ahead and put you through the process of how I used to do this back in the day. Um so basically, I would go through forums, or I would go through I guess now it's Reddit. There aren't really forums anymore. Or I'd go through comments and stuff, and there are people out there that kind of just like when you see something that's done enough, when you see when you see an idea that's done enough, you start to notice it, right? So yeah, you'd see some weird death battle ideas like, Neo versus fucking John Constantine or something. Something like that. You'd see something like that and be like, well, that's a stupid. I mean, I guess that could be cool, but yeah, it's because they're both Keanu Reeves. Or at least Keanu Reeves played Constantine in, like, probably the worst Constantine adaptation. But, that's kind of you see a weird one, and yeah, people say that, and then you see like pictures of it. It doesn't take much effort to put a picture of something up. But then you see one that people say a lot, that people say to do it a lot, and I noticed these, and some of these don't really make sense even to me. So I look into them, and I'm like, let me make sense of this, and this is why, and this is kind of why I do this. This is kind of why I do this, to bring attention to a lot of this stuff, and to take it seriously. So basically, I recently stumbled upon a fight, and there's this great channel. I'm not gonna plug it because I forget the name. There's a great channel that does these death battle trailers. They're not. I'm also not mentioning the name, so nobody can say I'm shitting on them, but they do these fan-made death battle trailers, and they drag on for a lot, and they kind of like kill the hype within themselves. But the fight that I saw was Kakyion from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures Part 3 Stardust Crusaders, and Pyrrha Nikos from Ruby. Just so, and before I get started on this, let me just say, there's an old. The last time I talked about JoJo's was with the Jotaro Kenshiro video. I don't think I've talked about it since then, but before that, I think the last time I talked about it was the Jonathan Joestar and Simon Belmont fight. At that point, I knew pretty much nothing about either character. I had not read or seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in any capacity. I basically just asked my friends about it because it was kind of a new thing. And then I asked my other friends about Castlevania because I still hadn't played Castlevania or really known much about it at that point. But yeah, so that's kind of so I didn't really know about the fight. Now I am pretty up to date. I've read through most of the series of JoJo's. I've read through Part 4. I've read into Steel Ball, Stone Ocean, Ventumoria, JoJolion. I've read into them, but I've not like really read through them. And I've seen pretty much all the anime that's out. So so I'm familiar. I'm very familiar, and I've seen all of Ruby. You guys, I think I've made it pretty clear. Maybe I haven't, actually. Okay, I'm a huge fan of Ruby. Anyone who watches, I don't know if the Yang reaction video is still up for the Yang versus Tifa, or, I've done some other fights here and there about Ruby, but I'm a big fan of Ruby. On paper, the show is handled terribly. But, yeah, I'm gonna get some slack for that. But, so I know both of these series, but basically when I saw this, I just thought, it's a weird fight. Why are they doing this? And I kind of looked up, and it's basically because they're both redheads, and they both died quote-unquote heroic deaths in the third installation of their series. Kakyion died, spoilers by the way, Kakyion died in part 3 of Stardust Crusaders, and Pyrrha died in Ruby Volume 3. So, this is a pretty big, so, those are very small connections, but this is a pretty big fight for, fans of each series, because they've both, in a way, become fan-favorite characters just by dying. I mean, Pyrrha was a fan-favorite before she died. Kakyion didn't really have too much personality, and then he died, and then there's that. But, the actual fight itself. So let me go through an analysis here. This is a death battle analysis, after all, not a death battle prediction. Let's start with Kakyion. Kakyion is a stand user, much like many people in JoJo's after Part 2. And his stand, specifically Hierophant Green, is, considering in what part of the series it was made and when it was introduced, it's actually quite a unique stand, because most stands at the beginning kind of just had, Star Platinum was just punch, punch, punch really fast at first. Silver Chariot, stab, 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 Magician's Red, fire, that's and then everything else, things were just very basic. But, then you get into Hierophant Green, which is actually, the stand got more and more unique characteristics after time. So basically, the stand's actual primary ability is his Emerald Splash, which is where he fires, he basically creates and fires emeralds at the opponent, little, stone emeralds. And he can also extend, but the other characteristic of the stand is that it can also extend its body. Its body seems like a single body, but it's actually basically a wound up, a very thin wound up coil of a body. And it can separate itself into this coil at any time. So it's, so the stand can extend its body. I forget, in the Steely Dan fight, I think it was something crazy, well, actually no, in the 40 meters we know was the extent of the Emerald Splash in the fight with Dio. So, the 40-meter Emerald Splash, he had his body wrapped around him, around the city, in a web, for 40 meters around. So we know that he can extend his body, over 40 meters if he's going all around like that. Which also just makes him really hard to hit. And the other thing is that the stand is able to, being able to make itself as thin as it can, it's able to they're kind of like tendrils that they can go in. It's able to grab things very, very specifically and very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very precisely. It can grab things, it can grab very small objects out of very small places. It's like a master at operation, So that combined with the Emerald Splash, it also makes a very good binding. It also makes a very good binding, kind of material where it can, wrap around somebody. And the other thing, it's also been known, it's also able to, these tendrils can also become solid and jagged to stab through things. So it's a very diverse and very discreet stand. What Kakyion does is he'll usually he'll move around, or he'll and leave little tiny traces of the tendrils around him, so that the opponent doesn't notice it, and he'll run into them and then get bound up by them, or he'll talk to the opponent or shoot emeralds at them just to distract them, while he slowly unravels Hierophant Green and kind of moves it towards them to bind them. So it's kind of a trapping, kind of projectile, it's a very ranged, it's a very area-heavy stand. It uses the environment very heavily. but it's not as strong physically as most other stands. However, Kakyion himself is incredibly incredibly brilliant. He's a very gifted student. He's a very gifted strategist. Like I said, he's able to outwit a lot of these veteran stand users just by kind of misleading them. He's a master of deception. So with that, it makes him very formidable. This very same could be said about Pyrrha. She was I believe it was the Vale champion 4 years in a row, or the whatever kingdom she's actually from. Mistral, I believe. She was the Mistral champion for 4 years in a row in the juniors tournament. I guess that would mean she was doing it since she was 12, but whatever. Very expert fighter. Uses, you can even see like in her attire, she's meant to be mobile and she's able to very accurately use her weapons, which include I don't remember the fucking name. They're in Greek. I don't know their name. I forget. They stopped naming weapons in Ruby, so I stopped caring about the names. It's like Croceo Mars is John's, I believe, but Pyrrha's, she got a shield. She has a shield which she can throw, and we'll get into how she can throw and retrieve it later. But she also has a rifle that can turn into a short sword and a javelin. She can use it as just like a rifle. She'll often sit atop of the shield. She'll often rest at the top of the shield and fire it. And then she's also got the short sword form, which she uses as just a melee weapon. And then she also has a javelin form, which she'll use to throw. So that's come into play, very heavily. And then she combines that with her semblance, which is polarity, or the ability to control magnetism. So, yeah, anything metal, she can just manipulate freely using her semblance. Her weapons are made of metal, so she's been known to throw, get the sword knocked out of her hand, and she's very discreet about it. She'll she'll jump or something and make it look like she just happened to land in the spot where the sword came, but really she's pulling the sword towards her. She's able to repel enemy attacks discreetly. She's able to, she'll throw her shield, and then it'll look like it miraculously bounced, like she threw it in just the precise way that it miraculously bounced back to her arm, but really she's controlling it with magnetism to make it come back to her. She's, she doesn't like, because she's, because she uses, she fights other people with other semblances, she'd rather not reveal her semblance, so she tends not to rely heavily on her semblance. She doesn't, she makes it look like in the words of Cinder, she makes it seem like she's destined for greatness, but really she's manipulating destiny. She, in a world full of metal weapons, she is very, very powerful. And she's also just an amazing fighter. She was able to take out, all members of Team Cardinal in a 4-on-1 match, then immediately go and fight Mercury, though he was holding back significantly. And she was able to hold off Cinder, where she did use her semblance to full effect by just going full Magneto and just ripping metal down onto her. But the issue with that is that she was forced to because she was facing an overwhelmingly powerful opponent who also ended up killing her. So, there's that. So who would I think would win this fight? Unfortunately, we've got kind of a Bane versus Venom situation here, where the characters themselves are very interesting, and the idea of the matchup is kind of cool. The idea of the fight happening is kind of cool, but there is really only one conclusion here, that Kakyion completely has the advantage, and really Pyrrha has that advantage. Kakyoin is a stand user, so not only can Pyrrha not effectively fight the stand, but like a Kenshiro situation where where Kenshiro is able to specifically see stands, and stands are a manifestation of someone's fighting spirit. Kenshiro can see the life energy and the fighting aura of a person, so would be able to see the stand. So, I mean, maybe, depending if you wanted to stretch the... If you wanted to stretch the definition of aura and the semblance, it's described as being a manifestation of a person's soul. Stands are, in effect, the same sort of thing, but they're described very differently. They're described as fighting spirit, or life energy, or something like that. They're not really described as a soul. So, and even then, Pyrrha hasn't been shown to be able to see aura in any capacity. Try to say that 5 times. Aura, oh, not that hard. But she's not really been able to seen to be able to be like some aura expert or semblance, like, you know, without somebody revealing it. Semblances aren't something that are visibly obvious unless the semblance itself is. Like, you don't see somebody activating their semblance. They're here to counter a stand. And because of that, Kakyoin wouldn't... I mean, she might not even be able to see the Emerald Splash coming at her. So there's really no fair way for this fight to happen. Kakyoin would kind of just completely destroy her. But this fight is kind of fun. It's very one-sided, but it is kind of fun to do. Again, sorry for the darkness, but the time of year and, you know, limited light. I don't have any overhead lights in this room. My camera doesn't take overhead light very well. So, yeah. But anyway, I'm going to go with Kakyoin. And, yeah, I hope this video hasn't gone on too long to upload. But, yeah, anyway, Verbal Engine